Are you going to settle in?
Well, we just applied to a place in Pine Lake, Georgia, which
Hmm.
is a very small little community. It's like its own uh, principality. Actually, it's got its own little post office and stuff. But it's just outside of Atlanta, basically.
You're right.
Um,
Yeah, there's
yeah,
lots.
man, it's good to see you again.
It's good to see you. There's a lot to be said for these small towns. I'm in a small town.
Where are you
I'm in.
again?
I'm right outside of Fort Smith, Arkansas,
Okay,
in a little town. Well, it's 20,000 people, but it looks like it's 5,000. It's just spread out a little bit, but
right.
I'm like right down. Like a 3 minute ride right down to the main street. You know how in the old southern little towns they got the main street, all the
Yeah,
old buildings and everything.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
like.
it's like walking into a time warp
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. But yeah, man, it's been pretty intense here this last weekend. Did you feel that? Did you guys go
Man,
through that this
yeah,
last weekend? I mean, like since Thursday. So
I've
really,
been
yeah,
I've been feeling it, man. I'm super empathetic.
mm-hmm.
I'm like Cancer Sun, Cancer Rising, Pisces Moon, so I have like zero emotional boundaries, and I feel everything. And yeah, I just feel that I've been checking out some of your recent interviews on your channel leading up to this, and I really appreciate the conversations that have been going on around this like global shift in energy and consciousness. And I feel that there's some major like up levelings happening in the collective consciousness. And with that, it's sometimes paired with like this sort of chaotic feeling of like, growth and change is always uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And I think, particularly those who are real, true empaths are maybe feeling that growing pains kind of thing more intensely. And I certainly have been. The past couple months for me have just been very focused on grounding, like literally getting my feet in the ground, self care,
yeah, a lot of integration.
for sure. And just peeling away the layers of the onion of like all the things. I feel that as I'm growing and as I'm participating in this sort of like consciousness shift, it's very much life is very much showing me with like absolute clarity the things within myself that are no longer working,
Right.
and that is uncomfortable to see often, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
But but I'm seeing the lessons and I'm seeing the medicine of like, wow, I'm appreciating the clarity of it because it's like,
Yeah.
it's just showing up so fast the way that we manifest and that we create our own reality, including the things that we suffer with, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I see my part in that,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of integration, a lot of solitude. Even if it's you can't really judge solitude by the time, linear time, but because you can get a lot done in 10 minutes of you know being with yourself, being present with yourself. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's just it's just undeniable. I mean, it
Hmm.
really is. Like this past weekend was just like like we got shot out of a rocket. And
Hmm.
you're right about the sensitivity. I'm probably not, or I don't know. I mean, I know I've been sensitive, but it seems like other people have like a higher sensitivity, like you or Morgan. But I remember laying on the couch 2 nights ago after doing shows all day, and I lay down, and I maybe it was last night. I don't remember. I don't remember days anymore. But I was talking to Morgan on the phone, and then I was like, okay, we're gonna get off the phone. I'm gonna lay down here for 25 minutes, and then I'm gonna get up and do my work. And it was like 5 minutes after I'm get off the phone with her, and I turn on YouTube to just to see what I can pick up, and I couldn't watch the TV. I couldn't hear the noise. I couldn't see the visual, I just closed my eyes and I could feel like something going on. Then all of a sudden I heard this thunder boom,
Mm-hmm.
and it just went on for like a minute. It sounded like a bowling ball going down a bowling lane.
Mm-hmm.
And then the storm came, and then I went under, and I just felt these waves and waves and waves. And this happens quite a bit. I'm sure it happens to other people. Then I come out of it like an hour and a half later, and I'm laying there, and I'm awake, but I feel like I'm not in my body. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like my body's paralyzed. It's
Yeah.
tingling everywhere, and my head's like my head right now. My head feels very strange. Like yesterday, it was in the front of my head, and now it's in the back of my head. And yesterday, Morgan said it was in the back of her head. So I don't know what all that is.
It sounds to me like a bit of like what they call astral projection, astral traveling, when you have that experience of waking up in the middle of the night and it's kind of like a sleep paralysis kind of thing where your
Yeah,
body feels like you can't move. It's quite uncomfortable, really. But I've heard that that is like you're one step away from having this out of body type experience where you could float up or roll out of the body and be like very lucid in a dream, basically, to where
yeah,
and I've I've had those kind of experiences before where you think you wake up but you're still kind of asleep. And I've read some fascinating books years ago about astral projection and how to master lucid dreaming to the point where you can be outside of your body and literally go to other places on the planet or travel through time. And you know that's always been fascinating to me of like, but it's difficult. You have to really practice it a lot and kind of.
I think some of that stuff's just coming online because of the expansion. You know,
Hmm.
I've been having lots of lucid dreams. Last night was really intense. And one of the things that is different is like last night's a great example. And what I do is I'll keep my phone next to me just so I can check the time.
Hmm.
And so I was waking up at first like every hour for
Hmm.
about 3 or 4 hours, and then it turned into every 10 to 15 minutes. Yet
Hmm.
each time I woke up, I just, and I had total recall. I had these lucid dreams that seemed like it lasts for hours. And I
Yes.
remember I woke up at 10:15. I thought, well, should I just get up? And I thought, no, this dream's still continuing.
Yes.
So I was awake enough to pick up my phone and look at it, and then I put it back down, and it felt like 2 weeks go by, and I wake up and it's 10:30. So like 15 minutes go by, and so I don't know. Maybe there's some type of bleeding over, those places that we go and access, and more of the time we're conscious. Maybe that's why so many people are having lucid dreams now. A lot of people are talking about it, where they're having
Yes.
lots of lucid dreams.
And I think it's very there's a book that I read years ago by the Dalai Lama called like I think it's called Consciousness, Sleep and Dreaming and Death. And it's about how the practice of becoming present in the moment in your waking life can spill over to being present and lucid and aware in the dream state, which is very closely tied to these realms where we transition to when we pass on in
Yeah,
death. They use meditative practices to practice, because we spend what a third of our life asleep.
we used
So
to.
to right.
Now it's a crapshoot. Now you can sleep for 12 hours and then go 10 days sleeping 2 to 3 hours and wondering what the hell's going on.
Yeah, but to
Do you,
practice, because you can be, we can go about our day and be daydreaming, and
oh,
not
yeah.
really be lucid in our waking life. But I think maybe that's why people are experiencing this maybe growth in lucid dreaming, because we are becoming more conscious in our waking life, and it's spilling over into, consciousness is
Yeah.
not just when you're awake; it's also when you're asleep. You can be
Do
awake.
you ever like just during the day and you're just doing your thing, and all of a sudden, like, man, I got to lay down, and then you
Yes.
just get pulled under.
Yes.
That's crazy. To me, that I used to have a lot of seizures between the ages of 15 and 50, and I tell Morgan it reminds me of coming out of a seizure because you don't know where you're at. You're disoriented. Your vision's disoriented. Your equilibrium's disoriented, and then there's some level of like what I was talking about, like you can't really move. You're just like going. You're so. It's weird because you're really present with your consciousness,
Yeah.
and it's like your consciousness and your body are not connected. That's the way I would explain coming out of a
It,
seizure, and that's kind of how it feels like I was describing to you. And the other thing that comes too when I come out of these types of things that we're talking about, there's a really loud ringing,
mm,
loud ringing, and it's not coming from my body. Like you'll get the tones in the ears. It's coming from like, it feels like the room.
mm-hmm. It sounds to me like you are an astral traveler, whether you've been aware of it or not. But the book that I mentioned is called Projection of the Astral Body, and they actually explained seizures as when folks who are spontaneously, like, their astral body is just boom leaving their physical body for whatever one reason or another. Who knows the reasons that
Yeah.
you're feeling called to jet out for a second. But that's what the way that he explained that phenomenon is, like, your body goes into like this comatose state because your astral has just left the building
Yeah.
essentially, and what we are seeing is a seizure, but it's really just that person spontaneously poop. I'm popping out for a bit.
Yeah.
And it made sense to me. I was like, that actually, you know, um, but there was another thought I had on that. But yeah, I mean, so what do you think is going on with all these things? Obviously there's something going on globally.
Yeah. No shit, right? Well, I don't think anybody really knows, but I think that there's a lot, there's a lot to be said for what's been described and prophesized, which,
Hmm.
I could probably like point to two or three things. One would be everything's being seen for what it is, which sounds scary and all that, but it's not. Everything's being seen for the only thing that there is.
Hmm.
So that's one. And two, something happening that's actually affecting our physical form.
Hmm.
Somebody, Stephen Popiotek, who's my lab survivor and does a lot of shamanic work since his 20s. He was on yesterday. He's a friend of mine, and he was saying how in the 80s that science started noticing the DNA in the human body was changing collectively. From more collect. So I think that part of it is that we've heard. A lot of things you hear, and then do we actually feel and see the evidence? But I think the light body coming online. Morgan and I have had a lot of experiences. I'm sure maybe y'all have. Although some of these experiences we've had since she's been in Australia for the past 11 months.
Hmm.
So that's pretty interesting. And then I think the overall thing is that there are, I guess you would say, abilities that we have, memories that we have, and coding that we have that are showing great evidence in mass of coming online. And I think
Yeah.
those things bring a whole bunch of other kind of sub attributes with them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I agree. I think it's all part of this kind of, like you said, things that have been prophesied. The Great Awakening. I hear it called. On our YouTube channel, Twin Soul Poets, we've had a couple videos about this, what they call the Great Awakening, and I think that is what we're seeing in, this age of Aquarius, this big time shift. And it does feel very positive. Like I said, it can feel chaotic,
Mm-hmm.
at times, but it's like when I am able to get still within myself and ground and
Yeah.
get into that place of peace and meditation and stuff, I see the the blessing of it, and I see what's it's like as these old systems of enslavement, all these paradigms that are no longer working clearly for us, the ways that governments worldwide are set up and all these things. It's like those things are falling apart,
They
right?
are. They are absolutely falling apart, and it's almost comical
It is.
because the same thing that you're talking about, I'm like, if you look at our personal experiences with our dark night of the soul and our daily come to Jesus meetings with the universe,
Right.
is you actually see the same thing happening with these structures, these
Mhm.
illusionary structures that are let's say the pillars of the false matrix.
Mhm.
There, it's like a frequent, because the false flag frequencies aren't working anymore. The
Mhm.
guy that was just on brought up a good point that the factions, that there's not one faction. There's not like one Illuminati or one whatever you want to
Right.
call it. There's a bunch of them, and they basically operate on principles of imbalance, you might say,
Mhm.
exploitation, whatever. And it's, to me, converting now. I'm just like sitting here eating the popcorn, ready to watch the natives in that segment start eating each other. Like,
Yeah.
you see this like in say the mafia, other situations where somebody gets busted or
Mhm.
whatever, and then it just takes one person to become a rat or start turning on,
Mhm.
that segment, and then the rest of them just start following like, falling like dominoes. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's inevitable. I don't see how they can hold the strings together.
Yeah.
Somebody, because they're human beings too, for Christ's
Yeah.
sake. They're going through the same energies and being affected just as we are, regardless of what their convictions or understandings or alignments that we can't understand or identify with. It's still all one and the
Totally.
same. Yeah.
Totally. It's like if the nature of something is to be destructive and not sustainable, by nature, it has to destroy itself. And the nature of truth is that it has to reveal itself.
Yeah.
And so what makes me feel calm and empowered is to realize, okay, yes, this is a wild thing of like we're seeing the destruction, we're seeing the collapse of systems, but what I'm also feeling called to do is to remind myself of my own creative power and to, collectively with friends get together with tribes of people that are aware of our own, divine creative power and be like, okay, well, as these things are falling apart, what's really important is for us to start visioning and holding space for what is going to be the new system.
Right.
What is the new sacred economy where we can see all of ourselves being abundant and thriving and having, all the wealth and freedom that we need? Like, how do we see that happening? How do we see a peaceful world where senseless wars are not being fought? Can we see that world, because that world is also being created, and it's like you can't tune into it unless you align yourself with that vibration. I think that's the real game going on right
I
now.
think
It's like
so.
it's getting worse and it's getting better at the same time.
That's the point. Yeah. That's what we were talking about too in the last shows. We often get focused and fixated on what's put out in front of us 99.99% of the time. These types of exchanges you don't see in the mainstream media.
Hmm.
But I think there's been enough, enough of a congealment of, well, let's say, like, what do they say, like in the sleeper cells, or, just like monadic soul tribe groups that,
Hmm.
they're just all, the grid is lit and we're connected, and it doesn't provide evidence that's going to be seen in, let's say, mainstream, all of our understanding and validation and affirmation comes from our personal experience with ourselves, and now the experiences we share with other people. In particular, what you said, where we have a conscious gathering of people
Mm-hmm.
with like mind,
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging all that we do here, and
Mm-hmm.
then putting that singular ensemble, band of frequencies towards what you're talking about, even if it is just to immerse ourselves in that energy that's there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you been tuned in at all to this guy, Dr. Stephen Greer?
Yes.
Man, I've been so fascinated by his things, and I think that's such a huge picture of what we're talking about, of these, covert systems that have
Yeah.
been maintaining power and stuff, but there's like a real power of these. I've also been really activating prayer again in my life,
Mm.
where, you know, speaking out loud and calling in assistance and things from guides in it. And it's like, I feel like there's this acceleration of the things that we focus on and the things that we speak into
Yeah.
being. As a spoken word poet, I'm a firm believer that all words that we speak are prayers of affirmation, calling into existence, what we are vocalizing, whether we realize that or not. And the universe is non-judgmental. It will bring in and say yes to whatever you're speaking, whether it's positive or negative. It's like it just is. And so we're seeing this acceleration of, like, when I speak things and I get into a negative spiral, I see those things manifesting real quick, and I'm like, okay, I messed that up.
Yeah, I
That
think that was the big surprise of the whole reality of instant manifestation coming online. Is we were thinking, oh, I'll be able to manifest that red Corvette, but I think we quickly learned over these last couple of years that it's what you're talking about. You have to so it becomes very important, where what your focus is, because
yeah.
we're it's almost like we kind of graduated from one level to another, and we understood that we've been unconsciously creating, and
Hmm.
and so we graduate, and they're like, okay, as a reminder, the first thing that you're going to have to master is the fact that what you're manifesting also, now that
Hmm.
is, your thoughts are the root of all that.
Yeah,
And if you need a reminder, we get them real quick now.
there's like a real sense of responsibility with it, and but yeah, it's reminding me of this poem that I shared in a presentation recently about the power of perspective. I did this talk at um, a Unity church down in Georgia, and it was all about that, like, if we do create our reality, and our focus is one of our most powerful creative tools, how do we put our focus and our awareness onto like a higher perspective that sort of sees the vision that we're wanting to create, rather than, it's like Michael Bernard Beckwith has that quote that I love of, like, pain pushes until the vision pulls. And it's like the negative stuff, the suffering stuff, that teaches us too. It serves us, and that is showing us what we don't want anymore. And sometimes that pushes you into, something that you really are wanting more. But it's like, it's when we can really set our sights on where we're trying to head, it's like you start flowing with the stream instead of feeling like this
Mm-hmm.
so against the current. And there's like so this piece is called I Am, and it goes like, freedom stares us in the face on the edge of what feels safe. One step of surrender and we could forever leave this place to free fall, free fall. We fall over and over because we have agreed that such is the human condition. Subscribe to this original sin and believe that its bars keep us caged in to miss the mark again and again, punishing ourselves worse and worse every time, pleading for some divine to save us from drowning in this knee-high water. If we could just stop kneeling, stand up, to see, to breathe. There is divinity in each inspiration. We are all manifestors of our own creation. It is this responsibility that we fear, perhaps. But we quickly hand away our own power to God or Jesus or whoever might be near, forgetting that God's name means I am. So who are you? Who are you? However you answer, you will make it true. You choose. We choose. Maybe it feels safer to allow someone else to make our decisions, to act out a script that has already been written, but there will be a time when truth must reveal what is hidden. So step to the mirror, face to face with self on the edge of what feels safe. Ask yourself, does it feel safe to claim God's name? Say it loud and surrender to truth reflected. I am perfection, observing itself. Will we believe or be alive? Be. For now is the address at which eternity resides. So we decide. How will we define I am? Thank you.
That's dope, man.
Yes.
Very dope.
Thank you. Yes, I wrote that, I think, back in like 2011 or 2012, and it's one of those pieces that it feels so much more relevant than it ever has. And it's like throughout the years I've come back to it and been like, oh, I didn't even know why I wrote that part. Oh, I didn't even know why I wrote that part. And it's like, it's funny how things will kind of reveal themselves over time. And I don't there's many pieces like that I've written that I don't really even totally take ownership of. It's like it just kind of came to me,
Yeah.
the complete thing, and I just had to write it down before it was gone, kind of thing. And a lot of my, as an artist, as an actor and performer, like a lot of my process is really just about learning how to get out of my own way.
That's it.
Let whatever wants
That's
to come.
it. I went through an exercise on the first. It wasn't self-imposed, not from the human level, and it was all about things coming into my field, be they past or in the present moment, like really loud noises or metaphorically or not. And it was just let it go and see what happens. And it was a whole day of let it go, see what happens. And synchronicities increase, and I had a pretty wild experience that night. And then it carried over for the next couple of nights. But it was like, I don't know, like I got a picture into what reality is. And the way to get there was just to let go of all as they came, let go of all, I guess you could say, attachment to things. But as I understood it, I'm not disconnecting from anything. I'm just attaching to something that I perceive to be important enough to take my presence away from me, which is really, you take away my presence, you take away my power. So that was the kind of the end of it was, so here's what that looks like.
Yeah.
And it was like, holy shit, I just went into the twilight zone. Like, this is wild, but then to understand, but this is the way it is, which is very much like an atmosphere of dream state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is all about that. And it's one of those things where as I get deeper and deeper into acting training, which is all about stepping into other perspectives and expanding the idea of like what I am or who I think that I can be, stepping into another's experience from a truthful way.
Wow.
or even writing from different perspectives and things. It's like we realize that these boxes that we put ourselves in of like who we think we are ultimately always so limiting,
Yeah.
and there's so much access available to like just infinitely wider and more powerful experiences in this like creative process if you can just open, you know, it's such a weird like catch 22 that the creative process is so much more about surrender and letting go than like trying to enforce your will and make something. I got to make this
That's right.
music. I got to make this movie. I got to make this. You don't.
Spontaneity doesn't have that element, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's inspiration is a flash, and that's what you're talking about. And
Mm,
it's yeah. I mean, yeah. So obviously you're in a sacred union. Y'all have a great story, by the way. If anybody wants to take a look at him and his partner telling their story, it was April 14th of last year. Just search
mhm.
his name, Soul Speaks 5D. But there's obviously the whole dance of the masculine and the feminine, the shedding of the distorted feminine, the shedding of the distorted masculine, the rising of the true divine genders, and so on, individually as a couple, and however you want to look at this. Uh, there's a lot to be said for these couples that are doing this because a lot don't make it
Mhm.
uh, during this time, and the physical embodiment of these frequencies through the living human being avatar. There's a lot to be said for these couples and their influence, but at the same time, they are microcosms of the overall dance, and it's not always peaches and cream. And it
Yeah.
can, if our individual journeys can fluctuate, then why wouldn't the couple's journeys fluctuate as well? Have you noticed anything significant in the dance of the masculine and the feminine in this year? In terms of like any dynamics that have been enhanced or diminished or increased or presented themselves, anything like that?
Holy cow, man. To put it way oversimplified, yes.
Yeah.
I think just when we talk about the intensification of like different aspects of the self being revealed with no room to hide from your own bullshit whatsoever.
Mhm.
I mean, my wife and I's dynamic has always really served as a very powerful mirroring effect for sure, where, we've both learned so much about ourselves through our daily interactions and our intimacy, and just everything about our connection has over and over again presented all kinds of really humbling lessons, very, very uncomfortable lessons often. And it's, that I would say this past year has been the most challenging year of our relationship in general, not just marriage, but like, because of how much, like, I just, one, the transition has affected us a lot. Of like we both lost our jobs during the pandemic. Both of our jobs closed, and we've sort of the past couple years been in and out of different living situations, and living with family and then living with friends, and struggling to find housing in a very crazy housing market. And it's like that can be a pressure cooker
Yeah.
for any relationship. But you know just I believe, we believe we're called Twin Soul Poets is our business name and our performing name, and we believe that we're twin flames, and that's, you and your partner know that dance of like there's a very deep like soul level connection, but there's also a sense of knowing that you have your own purpose, but you also have a purpose together.
Hmm.
You also have a something that you're supposed to collectively offer to the world, and that has continually grounded us and been something to come back to, as like, this is sometimes beyond us and we don't totally know what we're being called to do, but we're following the breadcrumbs as they come. And our business has been growing a lot in the last year. We've had more coaching clients than ever before, finding us on YouTube, and been coaching people all over the world from of how to manifest deep soulful love in your life, from people in India to recently Estonia and all over the UK, a ton of people in the UK. And so that's really rewarding work to be able to, we always just try to come from our experience,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and try to share, humbly, like lessons that we're going through. Like, look, we're not perfect. We have all kinds of ups and downs, and, but this is what we're learning from it. And we're, that it just seems really clear that, like, it feels like the universe has been pushing us to put ourselves out there in that way. And like, there's something about our, almost like our relationship itself that serves as inspiration,
Mm-hmm.
or sense of hope for others, or, whatever it may be. So we
Yeah.
just try to share it.
It's yeah, I mean, we've heard this over the years. I mean, and we get a lot of messages and of course comments and stuff, but yeah, I think it's more than an example. It's proof. I think is what it is. It's proof. Like I know over the years, many times people have said, "You made me believe in love again," or "You made me believe that this can actually happen," or because so many of us, really all of us, have been jaded by the Earth's definition or explanation of what love is. But
Yeah.
it's obviously, and I think you two are a good example because you're not just romantic partners, you're business partners, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you're friends.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was thinking about this a couple of nights ago. Like, there's so many, that we never have 100%. Like, the universe always leaves 10% undefined. I guess that's where we build the new template in real time, or refine it at a minimum.
Right.
But I was just thinking, like, man, I mean, Morgan is like the best partner. If we take the romance out, take everything out, and say you're just two people going on a mission on the Earth, two
Mm-hmm.
astronauts, right? Like, this is a solid partnership. Like,
Yes.
we're both plugged into the game at an
Mm-hmm.
individual level, as a couple, and observing the collective and experiencing all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
that, yeah,
I've totally come to believe that love is not, it's not all about being comfortable all the time. It's not all about being happy all the time. It's not all going to be flowers and rose petals. And a lot of the people that we work with are, single and trying to find their, like, ideal relationship and things, and like manifest their twin flame,
right,
right? And something we, like, repeatedly, like a nail that we hammer home over and over again, is like, this work, like, doesn't end when you come together. It's not like coming into union with your twin flame is not like a mountaintop peak that once you get there, you're good. It's all rainbows and flowers from there. Like, that's almost like where the work begins, because you're entering into a new stage of, like, just so much mirroring, so much you're coming together because there's things about yourself that your partner is going to reveal to you, and vice versa. And that growing process, there's so much growth that happens in that process, and it's not always comfortable. Growth is
no,
very often a very uncomfortable feeling that we are, like we were talking about earlier, we're seeing it all over the collective and all over the planet right now, going through this uncomfortable growing process. But it's like, it's almost like there's no choice anymore. Like, people are being dragged to that ascension process, whether you're kicking and screaming or you're going willingly, like it's time to take these steps.
Yeah.
And you know, I think a very deep, soulful, intimate relationship can just, I think it just helps that process so in so many ways, you know.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, the recipe for attracting a counterpart is the same recipe that got us to the point of even asking that question. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, we're cleaning ourselves up. And as we clean ourselves up, our frequency rises. Whether we're at stage 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, let's say a lot of us can relate to this, asleep or, not paying attention, kind of at the mercy of the conditioning and the programming that we're unaware of, we're attracting the same thing to us.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we increase our frequency, our partner, potential partner, as well as everything else, begins to match us at a higher and higher level. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that the same process, the same template for the individual and for attracting a potential partner is the same thing for the partnership itself.
Yes.
I've often said, to me, the best thing about, when people say, well, what is it like? And what is it like? Because they do think it's all peaches and cream. It's like our own lives. It's gotten better and better and better. You have deep dives at times. You have energetic separations. You have the same elements that you have on the individual journey. It's just that, for me, it's like when you're in a situation where, people say, I got your back. Like when you know that the other person is going to, check under their hood and be responsible for themselves as you are, even knowing that we all have fits and spurts, it just becomes this exchange of alternating roles and empathy enhanced, and really teaches you what I don't know that we can learn that by ourselves.
Yeah.
Because having an external playmate like that is such a confronting thing, like you were talking about with the way you described this year, even just as an individual as well as a couple. Like everything is coming to be seen. So there's this. It's nice to have that complementary, because a lot of it is polarity. So you're seeing things that are totally opposite of you. And so to bring that into oneness is a very powerful thing. And also to collaborate together co-creatively when you're not, where the objective may be the same, but the two players are yin and yang. So that's another. I always see it as a toroidal field, like they're doing, like kind of bouncing against each other, and then once they hit a certain point, the machine turns on. Right?
Yeah.
And it's just a constant coming back together, coming back again, coming back again, and creating.
And it is so that thing of like the real becoming aware of our own, like my own tendency to project my own states of anxiety or whatever emotional state I might be going through when I'm not feeling connected to my inner sense of peace or whatever, and the habits that I will have of projecting that onto whoever might be the closest person to me. But it's so often in a relationship it ends up being your partner, where you're like, oh, they're doing this to me, they're making me feel this way, and learning that ability to like take ownership and take responsibility for our own states of being, and and to sort of realize like nobody is ever doing anything to us. Life is not happening to us. It's reflecting our own belief systems, stories that we're telling ourselves, whatever. And so being able to like actively pick up the pen and start writing your own story the way you want it to look, and the ways that, when you do start, when I find myself really prioritizing taking care of myself and my own needs, and getting into a place of like where I feel at peace within myself, I see my partner having the same kind of like sense of peace, and it gets into that field state where you're talking about, where it's like you're vibrating together, you're in union, you're in harmony, things are flowing and just naturally. And it's like it goes back to like so many of these ascended masters and their lessons of like the best thing you can do for the world is to really deeply practice self-love and self-care, and finding your own inner peace, and that the ripple effects that has are powerful beyond our understanding, because we are all deeply connected, not just our intimate partners. Like all of us are deeply connected, and that's the most powerful thing you can do for anybody, is to love yourself and to find your own peace.
I was unmuted. I was commenting on that. But no, you're right. That's another thing it shows you too. It shows you the other side of it. So it
Mm-hmm.
shows you like the magic. And the magic is, oh, telepathy is real. Oh,
Yeah.
light body experiences, or more confidence in the empathic abilities as the
Mm-hmm.
games go away, because the programs are going away. There's no longer the old dialogue. I find too that even as we go through the fluctuations that we all go through, less has to be said, because you just know what is real,
Yes.
and it's a lot easier to let go for what we know to be programming and the human condition. So, like, if we know that's what it is, then why is it still with us? You know what I mean? So it's like, I get it, but let's understand it's not going to stay with us unless we want it to. So
Yes.
then once that's taken off the table, and I think a lot of it too works just like downloads and transmissions, because just because you get to that epiphany mutually, let's say, it doesn't mean that the programs aren't going to come back and be a little less and be a little less and be a little less.
Yeah.
It takes a while for the human to really embody. So you can say that there is such thing as instantaneous healing, but when it comes to these deeply embedded, you know, eons and lifetimes and millennias of these loops and programs and whatever patterns, whatever you want to call it, it takes a little while to
Yeah.
forge the new pathways.
And it's almost like that's what we signed up for in coming to this 3D experience on this planet, is like there was a knowing that we were signing up to forget all this shit. We were signing
Exactly.
up to get our own power, and we were signing up to experience the confusion and the separation from, our divine truth when we even came here. Like there's a powerful purpose in all of that too, and the limitations of it. And if we had it all figured out like that, there wouldn't be a point to being here. And I loved something I saw on a Gaia program, where as interviews with ED, and there was a woman who channeled the Pleiadian collective, and
Okay.
she was talking about the or her channel or was talking about the purpose of this ascension process that is happening on Earth right now, and the deep compassion an understanding of suffering and basically like consequences that humans are bringing with us from this 3D lower density as we are transitioning into like 5D and beyond, which is very much what's happening right now. And it's the reason why there's a lot of action in the sky with, different, you know, ships showing up and people kind of watching what's going on. It's like, because it's the greatest show on the universe right now, because what we're bringing into those higher realms. She was saying, like, don't think of these higher dimensional beings as being on a pedestal above you somehow, or like being better than you in some way because they are having access to this instant manifestation. They actually have tremendous respect for what humanity is
Exactly.
doing. We're bringing this deep compassion and understanding of suffering and stuff, brings into, that's something that those higher realms didn't have before us bringing that into it, because in an instant manifestation flow, it's like you can create, delete, create, delete, create, delete, and there wasn't really that understanding of, oh, just because I can instantly create and manifest something, maybe doesn't necessarily mean I should, because
Right.
there's consequences, and certain things can create suffering for others, and what that experience is, and that's something that a wisdom that we're bringing into those realms that wasn't there before, and it's a very powerful gift that we're bringing in.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Like what we thought was, like say, oh, like they're like looking at us going, oh, they're stupid, they're children, or but there is something about the experience that we're having. We are the boots on the ground. We're gaining code, hands on, and this is our offering to the universe.
Yes.
And make no mistake, there's a lot of interest in what we're doing in this realm at all levels, because what we have here is the newest code of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Like it may sound crazy that you have all this, technology, say millions of years ahead of us, that they have or that they can do or whatever. But who has the, the grace and the code of having a emotional spectrum as broad as the human, in a polarities broad as the human experience? I mean, this is massive.
It is.
Like
And
we,
I had never really thought of that aspect of it until I saw that program, and I was like, that makes so much sense.
mm,
And it really does kind of bring into perspective, like, what are we even doing here? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, that's kind of the purpose, and I can understand that. Um, and it's like it also brings in a deeper level of compassion for yourself, like myself, and
yeah,
being okay with not having all the answers, and being okay with falling flat on my face over and over and over again, and just the trial and error of that, and being like, it's okay that I messed up, because that's kind of what I came here for.
yeah,
And you know
yeah. It's the the perfection is in the imperfection, right? If we came into the body in perfection, what would the point be? Like, I
exactly.
mean, we would be basically, um, basically just being a replication of what maybe, let's say other dimensions where, let's say a 5D, dimension where you have, so we're, I don't know if it's, and again, we struggle to explain all this stuff, but like, is 3D really the low one on the totem pole? And is 5D going to be 5D, if we're going to use these metaphoric terms? Is it going to remain the way it always has been when we come in the door? We're bringing in a living library to add to the Akashic. So we're in essentially expanding wherever we go. I remember years ago getting a download back in the day in the old studio, and it was, when you guys get done, You will be universal soldiers because you are universally seated like no other.
Yeah.
And therefore you contain more code than others. And you'll
Yeah.
be able to go to anywhere in the multiverses and be able to supply, the latest and greatest and such a multifaceted, hybrided type of consciousness and ability.
I believe that. I really do believe that. And the understanding of that feels like it's, I'm constantly, the big theme of my life the past few months especially has just really felt like surrender and trust. And even all the things that I would on a knee-jerk reaction judge or feel like this, I can't believe this is happening again, or trying to see from the perspective that everything is serving me in some way. Everything is medicine for me somehow, or else it wouldn't be happening. And
Exactly.
you know and just flipping that switch of perspective can open to what would be a otherwise really crappy experience to something that can become so profound, so healing,
Yeah.
so such a blessing. Like I just days ago was able to deposit a check for like more money than I've ever really had at one time from a car accident that I was in over a year ago. I ended up with like a herniated disc and stuff. But at the time, of course, the car accident happens, and I'm like, oh, this is horrible. My wife's car is totaled. It was scary as hell. Like I couldn't knee jerk reaction. I'm like, this sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But then 1 year later, it ends up being like one of the biggest blessings I've ever had.
Yeah. There you
Like
go. Thank
it's
God
so
you're all right.
yeah.
Hey,
It's crazy. Go ahead.
we're gonna have a Soulogy Fest in Fort Smith, Arkansas area,
Oh yeah.
September 23, 24, 25. No, and part of the Soulogy Fest, a big part of the Soulogy Fest is the artistic part and
Uh-huh.
the group participation part. So I'll keep you informed. We're pretty much neighbors. We're not that far from each other, really.
Yeah, Arkansas is not far at all.
Mm-mm.
Definitely keep me in the loop on that, man. I'd love to, come out and offer some of my poetry.
There you go,
Yeah.
man. I'm not as much of a. I'm not the full time poet I used to be, but I love poetry. I love writing what people call conscious rap. I call it soul speaking, but yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
It's
give
just,
your what's that?
I believe it's just channeling, whether you know it or not. I
Sure it
believe
is.
it's
Sure it
other
is.
stuff speaking through.
That's sure it is. Absolutely it is.
Mm.
Hey, give her our love and thank you both for the work that you're doing because it's expanding everybody. And
Well, thank you. Likewise, I love tuning into your channel and just hearing your perspective and the others that come on the show. Like, it's good to, like you said, you don't often see these perspectives in mainstream, but this is what we're talking about here. This is what's really going on, and it's like
absolutely.
it's so powerful.
Absolutely. And we can't forget that. That's the thing. All this fuckery going on, we just can't forget that there's, for every degree of that, there's probably a degree times a million, as in a million souls lit that are countering that, and so I think we're doing a great job. I really do.
I do too, and that self love piece, I think that's a huge part of this journey right now. What we're being called to really powerfully love ourselves and see the value of our own journeys and our own mistakes and failures and all that. Like see that what we're offering to the world through our own journey and story. And just a quick plug before we go, my wife and I, like I said, we talk about a lot of these kind of things on our channel, Twin Soul Poets on YouTube. So definitely check that out, especially if you're wanting to manifest that deep soulful love in your life and you're feeling that called to like have a connection like that and a partner. I think we have some really good content on helping to, it's really all about, our process is all about aligning yourself with self-love, really.
Yeah. That's what I
and
mean.
the
It's the same process for one as the other.
yeah, and you
If people say, how do you attract? You say, well, do your work on yourself. and the,
it really is
and the,
all about that, and it sounds so cliche to be
yeah,
like, oh, when you're not looking and you're just loving yourself, that's when they show up. But it's that was our experience,
yeah.
and I really believe in it, and so you know.
Right on. All right, brother. You take care. Peace out. I'll see you later in 2022. Give her our best.
Yes, thank you. I would definitely tell her you said hey.
All right, man. Take